Making narrative films, it's amazing. We love it. But eventually we all got to pay the bills, right? And it took me a long time to find my way out of a string of crappy, low-paying day jobs. Eventually, I found editing, which gave me the opportunity to use my actual skills to get paid. But before I could land my first editing gig, I figured I would need to create a reel of my best work. And it turned out I had a lot to learn about what makes an editing reel actually effective for finding work. So here's what I learned, which also applies to cinematography reels, directing reels, whatever. Hopefully this video helps you make some money this year. Now for reference, I'm about to show you my editing reel from the last time I updated it, which was all the way back in early 2020. This reel helped me land quite a few gigs and even offers for 2 full-time staff jobs, one of which I accepted. So let's break down what makes a reel like this effective, but first I'm just going to play it for you. All right, we have a lot to break down here, but before we get into the nitty-gritty, let me just tell you the first overarching principle of this video, which is sell the sizzle, not the steak. When it comes to reels, do not be humble at all. This held me back forever. I was the guy that couldn't even brag on my resume while everybody else was just straight up inventing job titles. You must make your reel look as impressive as you possibly can. That's the only reason that this thing even exists, to impress somebody who might hire you, to make them get FOMO that you'll slip through their fingers. Also, a reel is just highlights, okay? Whatever work you're pulling from, you don't have to do justice or honor that much, okay? You think of those full pieces that you're pulling from like a steak. A steak is great. It's a nice meal, and it's available if anybody's looking for exactly that meal at exactly that moment. But if you're not hungry, simply seeing a picture of a steak won't make you want to take a bite necessarily. But you know what will? Watching that sexy sizzle. Catch a big whiff of the char-grilled smoke. Even if you weren't hungry a minute ago, they'll start making your mouth water, and that's what you want to do for whoever's watching your reel. So stop thinking about your reel as representing and doing justice to each piece of work, aka your steaks. And just remember, this reel is only the sizzle and the smell of your work. Think about, how can I make each of these pieces look as sexy and impressive as possible? What's the best way to spin this work in a reel without lying or being shady? I'll give you an example. I did a bunch of work for Netflix early on in my editing journey. Granted, editing their corporate videos, not editing episodes of Stranger Things or House of Cards or whatever. But on the other hand, I worked out of the Netflix building, right? I met their strict standards. I created some of the workflows for those corporate videos. Hell, Reed Hastings came down and personally thanked us one day. So I'm not gonna go out of my way to explain what I didn't do at Netflix. I'm just gonna drop that Netflix logo as early and prominently in my editing reel as possible. Hit them with that sizzle, baby. That said, important note, never, ever, ever put something on your reel that misrepresents your role in that job. For example, putting a piece that you assistant edited in your editing reel. Word gets around, the actual person who did that job on that piece will find it. Your reputation will never recover. When it comes to reels, shorter is better. When I applied for my first assistant editing gig and I passed along my reel, I think it was 2.5 minutes long, and I took pains to make it that short. Turns out, it was still way too long. And when I got hired for my first gig, the editor I was working under was really legit. He was based in New York City. He had edited music videos for big artists like Beyonce, tons of big commercials, and he got flown to Los Angeles for this job for a week's worth of fairly easy work with an assistant editor backing him up and doing the grunt work. So I was trying to absorb everything I could from him during that week. And eventually I just asked him, hey, the reel I sent over, did you think that was good enough for me to get more gigs? His response He said something like, "Oh, don't get offended. I didn't watch the whole thing. You know, I saw we had a mutual friend on Facebook, so I figured you weren't crazy. And then I just quickly skimmed through your resume, skipped through your reel. It seemed like you knew enough for this work. It was a very simple job. And you were one of the first people to message me, and I was in a rush." And as somebody who's needed to hire crew members myself, and I was like senior editor at my staff editing job, this is exactly how it goes. This is the most realistic hiring process you're ever gonna hear. He went on to give me a few tips about my reel, but the most important one was 60 seconds should be the maximum for a reel because nobody who's hiring has time to watch longer than that. By the way, right after that, when he showed me his editing reel, I literally felt like I was in American Psycho and he had just handed me Paul Allen's business card. He had so much top tier work to show off, it was almost hard to keep up with all the celebrities' faces that were popping up, and yet his reel was less than half as long as mine. It was simultaneously eye-opening and very embarrassing. And speaking of business cards, the reel is a business card. A reel is not art. Don't obsess over it and don't treat it as such. Just make something that shows that you have taste, talent, and experience. Don't spend a month or even a week making your reel. I limited myself to 2 days editing mine because I knew I would just obsess and tweak over and over if I let myself do that. So instead I treated it like work. Okay, I'm gonna spend 2 working days on this reel. If you wanna put all of that passion and energy and time into something, then I suggest doing that on an actual film and then put that new film into your next reel. Because having better material to make a reel out of is the best way to make a better reel. Otherwise it might just become an exercise in turd polishing. So with all that out of the way, let's break down the thought process of all the choices I made in this reel, and then I'm gonna give you my most important tip for editing reels at the end. Here we go. All right, first off, started with a very minimalist, simple, clean title card. I like minimalism, I like to keep things clean, so that's what I went with here. Notice that I only said editor, I didn't say director, writer, producer, editor. If you're trying to get editing jobs, just write editor. If you're trying to get cinematography jobs, just write director of photography. You know, don't overstack the deck because it makes it look like you're not a specialist, and people generally are gonna be hiring specialists as opposed to, well, I want an editor who can produce and write and direct and blah, 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 blah. Take my kids to the park, show my wife a good time at dinner. Just put the one job that you want to do, which might necessitate making separate reels for separate types of roles that you want to apply for. After this, the music kicks off. We show all these logos. I'll talk about the logos in a second. But big picture here, there's 2 things going on. One, I made the reel exactly 60 seconds long. I was doing more commercial stuff at the time. Commercials, they want it to be like, you know, exactly 30 seconds or exactly 15 seconds, exactly 60 seconds, whatever. So I just wanted to kind of subtly show, yeah, I can do that. But the other huge choice that you're gonna have to make here is the music. And I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what music to use that kind of reflected my sensibilities and was not gonna be like annoying or abrasive enough that people wouldn't get to the end of the reel. I also wanted to stand out a little bit, and I thought that this song was not something that I'd ever seen somebody use in another reel, even this whole style of music. But I had a short list of like 5 or 10 songs, and I just tried them all out. This one had the best energy and kind of fit the footage the best to me, so I rolled with this. So after the music, the next big decision is what do you put first? I wanted to put the sexiest thing I had first, the most impressive thing to grab people right off the bat, and that was the collection of logos of companies that I'd worked with up till that point. So just flashing through them all as quickly as possible over a nice shot that's kind of out of focus so it doesn't draw attention. I'm going to talk a little more about that at the end of the video. Next, I did this. This is just the most dense, flashy, stylish edit that I had done at that point. And that was like the full edit. It was like a 6-second thing, so I just threw the whole thing in there. This was pretty soon after I'd finished Will the Machine. I was still pretty high on that project, so I wanted to put that in. And again, I'm selling the Sizzle, not the actual film, so I just put all of the festival laurels in here. Another sexy thing, Dr. Dre, Apple Music, Jimmy Iovine, Billy Ray Cyrus, Apple Music. Now look, not everybody's gonna have all this stuff. I certainly didn't when I started, but just take all the same principles and apply it to whatever you do have. Common, Propel Water. Now I'm just starting to show different types of work. This is clearly like social, where it's a 4:5 aspect ratio, I think. So I just put them side by side. Real Shorts. Another narrative project. Postmates commercial. Now, notice what's going on with the audio this whole time too. I'm, again, subtly flexing my skills by doing a lot of sound design with this footage. A lot of the sound design that's in here was not in the actual edits. I don't care about the actual edits. I want the reel to be the most impressive edit. And again, I'm selling the Sizzle. So one way I can sell the Sizzle and my skill set is to show, hey, I'm pretty good at sound design. And you're just gonna instinctively know that if you watch the 60-second reel, because I sound designed the hell out of it. I'm trying to show different types of work here. This is a little documentary piece showing more celebrities. Bill Nye the Science Guy, come on. This is like showing graphics work. I used to be way more handy in After Effects than I am now. It's been a minute, pretty rusty, but this was a big selling point earlier in my editing career that I could do graphics in After Effects. This is like a mixed media edit. Again, selling the Sizzle. At the end, I wanted to show that I did comedy stuff too, so I put the college humor part and just ended with something funny and vaguely celebratory. Which kind of went along with the music too. Now, I have one more very important piece of advice relating to reels for the end of this video, but I just want to say real quick, if you want advice on your reel or your film or your script or whatever, I do get too many requests for that to do it for free, unfortunately, but through my website, I do offer one-on-one consultations, or for a lower price, I'll do a pre-recorded feedback video on whatever you're working on, including your reel if you want. So if you want that personalized help, put the link below. Now, one more quick, but very important tip that I touched on earlier, but I just want to reiterate, is put the most impressive thing right up front in your reel. For me, that was all of these logos. And then I put like a flashy short edit that I had. I didn't want to save that for the end of the video. Never save stuff in your reel for later on, because whoever's watching likely won't even get that far. I've been on both sides of this equation. I've had to hire editors before. I'm not watching more than 60 seconds. I don't feel like I need to watch more than 60 seconds. In fact, 60 seconds is just a max. You can be less than that, you know. You can do a 30-second reel if you want. I'm not gonna complain about that. If I want more, I will request more. A lot of times with gigs, they're gonna ask you for specific full pieces that are more closely aligned with the actual thing that you're gonna be editing. But the reel is always the starting point, and I feel like the reel is what gets your foot in the door. So it's worth having a good reel that kind of covers all the bases. So I hope this helps you make a better reel and hopefully land some more work this year. If you want personalized advice on your reel or whatever you're working on, click below for my one-on-one consultation options. If you want to see step-by-step how I built my editing career and got my foot in the door to get those first gigs and expand it from there, click here. I break it all down. That was the first talking head video I did on this channel that went viral. So obviously it's a banger. That's it, folks. Let's make some movies.